The first laugh landed before the fork touched the plate. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the kind of laugh people use when they want to hurt without admitting it. "You're an embarrassment to this family," my mother said, clear enough for the whole table, clear enough for the waiters to hear, clear enough that silence followed, thick and deliberate. Then they laughed. Not all at once. That would have been too honest. My uncle smiled into his wine. My cousin snorted, then tried to hide it. My father didn't laugh. He just didn't stop it, which was worse. No one met my eyes. I stared at my plate like it had personally offended me, like the porcelain might crack if I looked up. I counted breaths. In, out, in, out. I let the humiliation settle. I let it soak into my skin. Because humiliation is useful when you know what to do with it. That's when my assistant walked in. He didn't announce himself. He never did. He leaned in like he was asking for a pen, his mouth close to my ear, his voice almost apologetic. "They're here," he whispered. Then quieter, and the documents just cleared. I didn't react, not externally. I took a sip of water, let my mother keep talking, let her enjoy the moment she thought she owned. But something inside me went still, not numb, focused. That was the moment I stopped being their punchline and became their problem. We used to be close. That's the part people don't like to believe. Families like mine rewrite history when it's convenient. They say I was always distant, always difficult, always the odd one. It helps them sleep. The truth is simpler. I was useful until I wasn't obedient. I built the first version of the company in my 20s, working out of a borrowed office with a cracked window and a coffee machine that burned everything. My father introduced me as helping out. My mother told people I was learning responsibility. I didn't correct them. I worked. I stayed late. I fixed problems no one wanted to admit existed. I signed nothing without reading it twice. I trusted my family because they taught me to. That was my first mistake. The second was believing blood meant loyalty. We had dinners back then, loud ones, stories. My mother used to brag about me, to strangers. "He's very smart," she'd say, hand on my arm, like she'd personally installed my brain. I remember thinking, this is what it feels like to belong. It didn't last. Belonging never does when power enters the room. Betrayal rarely announces itself. It leaks. An email forwarded a little too late, a meeting scheduled without me, a signature block missing my name. At first I assumed incompetence, then I assumed stress, then eventually I stopped assuming. The night I knew for sure I was alone in my office, past midnight, the building quiet enough to hear the HVAC cycle. I opened a folder I wasn't supposed to have access to. They'd forgotten to revoke my credentials. Inside were drafts, proposals, legal language sharpened to a blade. They were planning to remove me, not gently, not with dignity. They wanted to make me look unstable, reckless, a liability. My own mother had signed off on the language. I didn't feel anger, I felt clarity. That's when grief ends and strategy begins. I didn't confront them. That would have been emotional, sloppy. Instead, I smiled more. I showed up early. I let them believe their narrative was working. I listened. People talk when they think you're finished. They underestimate the quiet ones. They mistake silence for weakness. I built files, timelines, chains of custody. I recorded nothing illegally. I didn't need to. They were careless. Power makes people careless. I noticed where the money moved. I noticed which trusts were dormant. I noticed which signatures were required and which weren't. Most importantly, I noticed what I already owned, 76%. They forgot that part, or maybe they never understood it. The shares weren't flashy. They were buried in long-term instruments, family trusts, retirement allocations, things meant to outlive egos. They assumed control meant visibility. They were wrong. Which brings us back to the table. My mother was still talking, something about gratitude, about how some people didn't appreciate what they were given. I nodded at the right moments. I chewed. I swallowed. When my assistant whispered, "They're here," I knew he meant the board. When he said, "The documents just cleared," I knew exactly which ones. I excused myself calmly, apologized for the interruption. No one objected. No one ever does when they think they've won. "You're outdated. We're done here," the CEO hissed. He leaned forward like proximity would make him powerful, like volume would replace authority. I replied quietly, "Understood." That was the moment the retirement trust activated its voting rights. He didn't know. None of them did. By the time his assistant rushed in, breathless, pale, it was already too late. The board convened an emergency meeting. The question wasn't why, it was how. Who just fired the person who owns 76% of the shares? They tried to stall, to negotiate, to reinterpret. My mother cried. Real tears, strategic ones. My father went quiet. He always does when the ground shifts. I said nothing. I didn't need to explain. The documents spoke. The votes counted themselves. Power doesn't scream when it arrives. It clicks into place. The CEO was removed first, then the COO, then anyone who'd signed what they shouldn't have. By noon, the laughter from the dinner table felt like a distant echo. We met privately later, my mother and I. She didn't raise her voice this time. "You humiliated us," she said. I tilted my head, studied her, the lines I hadn't noticed before. "No," I said, "I remembered." She opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time in my life, she had nothing rehearsed. I didn't burn everything down. I'm not reckless. I rebuilt, quietly, precisely. I put professionals where relatives used to sit. The company stabilized, then grew. At the next family dinner, my seat was still there. No one laughed, no one met my eyes. And that was fine, because I wasn't there to be seen anymore. I was there to own the room, whether they looked at me or not. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, waits, and then signs the papers.